So let's make a quick project together. I have this idea of having some metronomes which are in sync with one another, which are each driving a random number generator or a counter or something very simple to generate some MIDI notes. But in order for things to be synchronized in the metronome world, we want to get away from using milliseconds, because when we change milliseconds, we can very easily get all of our notes out of sync with one another. So I'm going to introduce something. First of all, I'm going to choose one of my styles, so we can get some pretty colors and you can see things clearly. And I'm going to introduce the transport. And what the transport does is allows us to keep all the metronomes that we're running in a particular project synchronized to a global timekeeper, and that's what the transport is. And actually down here at the bottom, this little, actually I'm going to move that over so you can see it. Down here at the bottom, this little icon here is the global transport. And you probably didn't know what that was before, but now you know. And I've turned it on so we have a global transport. If we happen to have multiple patches open, they'll all respond to the same transport. And so the transport takes in some information, such as a message called tempo. Now here's a new format that we haven't come across before, but it basically is a message. We had the set $1, $1. Now we've got a message tempo $1. The principle is the same. Whatever value comes into this message will replace the variable $1 with that value. So if I type 120, the tempo will be 120. If I type 60, the tempo will be 60. Okay. And I'm going to put a couple of outlets next to my transport. This one and this one. And you can see when I hover that that is the beats. And this is the bars or measures. And this will be the ticks or units that come out of it. And so I'm going to simply create a metro. So, sorry, type N. Call it the metro. And rather than putting an interval that is a duration in milliseconds, I'm going to put a duration that is a note value, and I'm going to say 4n. And that means quarter note. 2n would be half note. Maybe I'll make one that says 2n, and one duplicate that says 8n. And you can look these up to see what the options are, but you basically can have half notes, quarter notes, whole notes, up to 30-second notes, and you can have dotted notes as well if you want to have dotted notes. But these are all turned on by a metronome, or sorry, by a toggle box. I'm going to type T for toggle box, and I'm going to do this. I'm going to type T, I, and have 4 of those. And I'm going to have one toggle box which turns on all of my metros and also turns on my transport. Okay? And one of the things that the transport needs is it needs to be updated. And so I'm going to send a message out from this metro, which is the quarter note metro, just to bang the transport so that I get data out of the transport. Okay, so let's just see if this works. Actually, we need some bang buttons in here to see that these are actually working. Command D to duplicate that, and Command D to duplicate that. And let's see, oops. Let's give it a name. But the transport's been running for a while since I turned the global transport on. So it's already at measure 133, and you can see each of the beeps is coming out. Now this could be useful information. We've already learned how select works, so that we could, for example, look to say, okay, when we get to measure number 12, we're going to do something. We get to measure number 16, we're going to do something. When we get to beat 4, we do something. We could use that information. Okay, I'm going to turn this off. Now, because I've used a single toggle box here, I'm turning all my metros on and off at the same time. And this means that they're synchronized with one another. There are other ways I could do this. I could use a gate and so on. And probably for your next assignment, you'll use gates to open and close the messages getting through. But for now, I'm just going to use this. And let's just, I don't know, let's just generate some notes. Why don't we just start with random? We did this before, random 13, and let's do the eighth. The eighth note is random 13 plus 72. Remember, that's the base note. So this will give us values between 72 and 84, so in a higher octave. And let's send that out. Make a make note, and let's give it a default velocity of 80 and a duration. Now we can use the same values that we use for our metros within the make note. So this make note is also generating eighth note durations. And if we change the tempo of the transport, those values will change. And let's send it to a note out number 1. And we're just going to be careful here. It's the second outlet to the second outlet, not the second outlet to the third outlet for this. And let's just see if that's working now. We put a value of 100. How about 60? $300. Okay, so now you can see we have sort of global controls over everything. So there's that's whatever was currently in the program for channel 1 is playing. And let's do something else here. And to quarter notes, let's do I don't know. Let's do a chord. Just do a just arpeggiate up and down a chord. So I'm going to do a random, and let's do a random 4. Maybe I'll just move this over a little bit to give myself a little bit of room. And the random 4. So I've got values of 0, 1, 2, and 3. So I'm just going to do this. By the way, the shortcut for select is SEL cell, and I'm going to do, is it 0, 1, 2, or 3? Those are my options when I have random 4. And I'm just going to say, how about 60? This is not, particularly clever way of doing things. 60, 62, sorry, 64, 67. This is, or 72. I'm going to duplicate that, and I'm going to attach all of these. Now we don't need a trigger when we're connecting many outlets to one inlet. We only need a trigger for connecting one outlet to many inlets. Okay, so, and let's go to channel 2 on this. Let's turn it on now. And let's very quickly put some program out. So argument, sorry, program out. I keep doing that. Argument 1, channel 1, duplicate that. Channel 2, duplicate that. Channel 3, with some number boxes so we can change some channels. And let's put 12 in there and 5 in there and I don't know, 80 in there. I wonder what it is. Okay, let's try this again. Okay, it's working, sort of. And then let's do a counter. Why not? And let's go up and down. So that's the number 2. And let's start with 36 and go up to 48, up and down. So that's going to be like our bass voice. It's just going to go stepwise chromatically. I'm going to duplicate that. And these, by the way, should be half notes, shouldn't they? This is going out channel 3. And I need to fix this. This was supposed to be quarter notes. Okay, let's see what that sounds like. Okay, so we've got it sort of working. You know, it's a little bit limited. We've got a random, you know, upper voice. We've got a, you know, just a C major middle voice, and we've got a chromatic stepwise lower voice running. And we could play around with different patches, and we could, you know, we could imagine that if I reset my, I believe I reset this by putting a 0 in here. Is that right? Yeah. So then it resets my transport. So I could, you know, I could decide that, you know, a select 8, for example, when we get to the 8th measure of this, then I could, you know, put in different sounds. 68, something like this. Let's switch that to 68. That's a bit ugly, isn't it? There we go. So if I run this now, faster tempo. That was just so exciting. This wonderful little patch we made. your patch is going to be much more interesting than this, but this is what we could put together in just about 15 minutes. So just to recap, what I've done here is just showing that if you want to use the global transport, you can turn on the global transport. You can use a transport object, and you can retrieve information from the transport object. And when the global transport is on, you can use duration values such as 2n, 4n, 8n, 16n, and those values can then they're linked to the transport, and you can do things like change your tempo and work with measures and beats and so on. I mean, you can actually put time signatures in the transport and so on if you want to do that. The important thing here, though, is that I've got one toggle box which is controlling them all. If I don't do that, I can still turn my metronome on so that it is not in sync, so it's not on the beat, so to speak. So one of the ways of ensuring that everything is lined up, that the downbeats are all together, is to turn all the metros and turn all the metros on at the same and the transport on at the same time. Wonderful voice I chose there. There's a whole bunch of wonderful General MIDI voices for you to work with. But this is, in a sense, the core of what you will be doing for the next assignment. So I would say experiment with this, play around with this. I'll put a patch for you to download that's very similar to this, although not exactly this, and that you can work with that and extend it and add some more things to it. Oh, I should mention that, of course, these values could be changed. If I type 16n, I can put those in and change the metronome from 32n and so on. So if we're running this, out of sync now. Okay. We're not out of, we're sort of syncopated when we do that. But you can change the metronome values using these symbols, the 16n, 32n, 4n, and so on. Okay. That's all for this week.